She boarded the flight like any other passenger, calm, collected, and barely noticeable. Dressed in a crisp suit and quietly scrolling through her phone, no one would have guessed she was the CEO of a fast-rising tech company. To the cabin crew, she seemed like just another first-class traveler. But what started as a routine trip quickly turned into a moment that no one on that flight would forget. The plane had just taken off when the woman politely asked for her pre-booked meal, a specific first-class option she had selected ahead of time. The flight attendant hesitated, then explained with a nervous smile that the meal wasn't available. A simple mistake, perhaps, or a mix-up in catering. She didn't argue, didn't raise her voice. Instead, she nodded, gave a quiet, "All right," and went back to her seat. The rest of the flight continued without incident, or so it seemed. What the crew didn't know was that this woman wasn't just any CEO. She had built her company from the ground up, with discipline, precision, and an eye for detail that made her both respected and feared in her industry. She believed that how people handle small responsibilities says everything about how they handle big ones. By the time the plane landed, her decision was made. One missed meal had turned into something far bigger, an issue of standards, accountability, and respect. As the wheels touched the runway, she made a call that would change the future of that flight crew forever. But what exactly happened in those final minutes? What did she see, hear, or feel that made her take such a drastic step? And was it really just about a meal, or something deeper that had been simmering all along? Stay with me, because what unfolded after landing will make you question how far someone should go to protect their standards, and whether this CEO was justified or simply went too far. Her name was Dana Brooks, and in the world of business, she was known as a quiet storm. At just 38, she'd already taken her tech company from a tiny apartment startup to a global name in cybersecurity. Her reputation? Unshakable. She wasn't the loudest in the room, but when she spoke, people listened. And when something didn't meet her standards, even the smallest detail, people noticed her reaction. Dana wasn't just flying for comfort that day. She had spent the last 72 hours in back-to-back meetings overseas, sealing a major partnership deal. This flight home was supposed to be her brief window of rest before she faced a board meeting the next morning. She had chosen a premium airline, first-class seat, and pre-selected a meal, not because she was picky, but because routine and reliability mattered to her. That meal symbolized something simple: control, order, the small comforts that help someone keep going in a high-pressure world. So when the attendant told her the meal wasn't loaded, Dana didn't get angry. But something shifted. She noticed the crew seemed distracted. Service was slow. Passengers were whispering about forgotten drinks, a broken entertainment screen, even a missed wheelchair request. It wasn't just about her meal anymore. She began observing, silently. Every mistake added up, like small cracks in a foundation. Dana's mind didn't work like most people's. Where others might shrug off a bad flight, she analyzed patterns. She noticed body language, disinterest, poor communication. And what troubled her most was that no one on the crew seemed to care, not even a simple apology with sincerity. Still, she stayed silent the whole time, her expression calm, almost unreadable. But inside, she was taking notes, mentally checking boxes, drawing conclusions. When the captain announced the descent, she didn't feel relief. She felt ready, because Dana had made a decision before the wheels even touched the ground. But what was it about that flight, that crew, that moment, that pushed her to take the drastic step no one saw coming? Was this just a matter of poor service? Or something that reminded her of a much deeper failure she couldn't afford to let slide? The real reason, still hidden, was far more personal than anyone imagined. As Dana stepped off the plane, her heels clicked softly against the jet bridge floor. She didn't look back, didn't acknowledge the smiling flight attendant who offered a generic, Thanks for flying with us. Her assistant was already waiting near baggage claim, phone in hand, eyebrows raised at the look on Dana's face. No car yet, the assistant mumbled, then paused. Something happen? Dana didn't answer. She was already deep in thought. The moment she got into the black SUV waiting outside, she gave a single instruction. Get me the airline's regional director, tonight. Back at the airline's operations center, the crew that had just completed Dana's flight was laughing softly, unwinding. Some were checking their phones, others changing out of uniforms. Most had no idea who Dana was. To them, she had been polite, quiet, even easygoing. But one of the junior flight attendants, Carla, wasn't so sure. She remembered Dana's eyes, not angry, not annoyed, just sharp, focused, watching everything. Carla mentioned it to the senior flight leader, but he waved it off. Some people just take flying too seriously. Don't overthink it. But Dana wasn't just overthinking. She was remembering. Years ago, she had been stranded during a business trip. No hotel, no food, no support from the airline. That moment had taught her something she never forgot. How quickly systems fail when no one takes responsibility. That night, she promised herself that when she had the power, she'd never let carelessness slide, especially when it came at the cost of people's trust. Back at her hotel suite, Dana reviewed footage her assistant had quietly obtained. Passenger. Complaints posted online. A clip of a spilled drink ignored by a crew member. A parent upset over a rude comment made to their child. It wasn't just a bad day. It was a pattern. Meanwhile, inside the airline's upper management group chat, one name had already started trending: Dana Brooks. Whispers turned into questions. Someone Googled her. Then the panic began, but still, no one knew what she was planning. Next. The crew went home unaware. The regional director hadn't returned her call. And Dana? She was just getting started. Because for her, this wasn't about one meal anymore. It was about accountability and a silent message that would echo through the entire company. By morning, the airline's executive team was in full crisis mode. Calls were coming in from corporate partners, media outlets were sniffing around, and a few influential travel bloggers had already picked up the story. Not the full story, just whispers. A powerful woman CEO had taken serious action after a bad flight. No one knew the details, but speculation was everywhere. The crew from Dana's flight still had no idea what was brewing. Some were already preparing for their next assignments, while others were casually checking social media, unaware. Their names might soon be pulled into something much bigger than a missed meal. Carla, the junior attendant who had noticed Dana's watchful silence, had a feeling in her gut. Something was off. She messaged her supervisor again, but got no real answer. Just a vague, "Let leadership handle it." But Dana didn't wait for leadership. She had already called a private meeting with the airline's board of directors. Her tone was calm, her message clear. She walked them through every point, what she experienced, what she observed, and how it all reflected a much deeper failure in their service culture. She didn't shout. She didn't threaten. She simply laid out facts, data, and consequences. Her final words before walking out of the room hit hard. This wasn't about a meal. It was about your brand. And if this is how you treat your most loyal passengers, I'll make sure the world knows. That same afternoon, the crew's schedules were suddenly frozen. Every member of the flight was pulled from duty, pending a full review. Some were confused, some panicked. Rumors started to fly. Was someone fired? Had a passenger filed a lawsuit? No one had answers, and silence from the top made it worse. Carla sat in her small apartment staring at her phone, heartbeat racing. She kept replaying the flight in her head. What did Dana see that the rest of them missed? Why hadn't anyone taken her concerns seriously when there was still time? And, as evening approached, a private jet sat ready on a remote runway. Dana's assistant handed her a tablet. "It's done," she said quietly. Dana looked at the screen, eyes narrowed, the final decision just a breath away. And in that moment, right before everything was about to break, the entire airline stood on edge, holding its breath. As Dana stared at the screen, something unexpected caught her eye. A flagged report buried within the internal documents her assistant had quietly obtained. It wasn't about her flight. It was from 2 weeks earlier, involving the same crew, same route, and almost identical complaints. Delayed service, ignored requests, a medical need that went unnoticed for too long. That case had been quietly closed by the airline with a generic apology and no disciplinary action taken. She zoomed in on one line. "Issue resolved. No further review required." That was the moment the story shifted. This wasn't just a single crew failing their duties. This was a cover-up. A recurring pattern of neglect, pushed under the rug to protect image over integrity. Dana leaned back, her expression unreadable, but her mind racing. The problem wasn't only the crew, it was the system that allowed it to happen more than once. At the airline's headquarters, the executives were still focused on Dana's immediate complaint. They didn't know she'd found the earlier report. They didn't know she'd already looped in a major investor, someone with a significant stake in both her company and the airline. The kind of person who could shift boardroom power with a single call. That call was coming, and when it did, it wouldn't be about customer service. It would be about leadership accountability, shareholder trust, and public exposure. Meanwhile, Carla finally received a direct message. It wasn't from management. It was from an anonymous account. The message read, "Check the crew log. You deserve to know what they're hiding." Her hands trembled as she pulled up the digital logbook. There it was, an edited entry from their last flight. Someone had removed her note about Dana's reaction and replaced it with, "No complaints, smooth service." Her heart sank. This wasn't just negligence. Someone had rewritten the truth. Someone in the chain of command didn't want the higher-ups, or the public, to know what really happened on that flight. Carla suddenly realized she wasn't just a witness anymore. She was caught in something much bigger, and across the city, Dana's jet was cleared for takeoff, but she wasn't going home. Not yet, because what started as a quiet reaction to a missed meal was turning into something much bigger than anyone had imagined, and the fallout hadn't even begun. Dana stepped off the jet into the quiet morning haze outside the airline's corporate offices. She wasn't there for more meetings. This was the end game. The call from the major investor had already gone through. By the time she walked into the boardroom, 2 executives had cleared their desks, and a third was quietly being advised to resign. The airline's CEO, looking pale and worn, stood waiting. He offered a tight smile. "We're addressing the issue. The crew has been suspended. We're revisiting protocol." Dana nodded, but didn't sit. "It's not about one crew," she said calmly. "It's about culture. You reward silence, you punish honesty, and now you're paying the price." Then she handed over a small drive. It held every piece of evidence: flight records, internal messages, edited logs, even witness reports. But what caught the CEO off guard was what followed. "I don't want media attention," Dana said. "I don't need public revenge. I want change, full internal audit, third-party oversight, retraining programs. And I want the crew involved. Not fired, but heard." The boardroom fell silent. Even Dana's assistant seemed surprised. After everything, the suspension, the investigation, the pressure, Dana wasn't there to destroy careers. She was there to force transformation. At that very moment, Carla was called into a meeting with a new HR officer flown in from the main office. She was told about the logbook edits. An investigation was already underway, and the supervisor who had dismissed her concerns terminated. Carla sat stunned, not just because she was finally being heard, but because her honesty had actually mattered. But just when it seemed everything was finally resolved, a final twist came to light. An anonymous email reached Dana's inbox. It included screenshots, messages between two executives discussing how to contain the fallout by subtly shifting blame onto Dana, suggesting her high expectations had created the issue. In the first place, she stared at the screen, then smiled faintly. Because now it wasn't just about a broken system. It was about the people still trying to protect it. And Dana Brooks? She wasn't done yet. Dana sat alone in her hotel room that night, the city lights flickering outside her window. The chaos of the past few days had finally settled, and the whirlwind she'd stirred up was beginning to reshape the airline from the inside. The audit was underway, policies were being rewritten, and, most importantly, voices like Carla's were finally being recognized. Carla, once hesitant and overlooked, had been offered a new position in the airline's internal service quality team. She had a say now, a seat at the table, and a chance to help fix what she'd quietly endured for too long. Her voice had mattered because someone had listened, and because she'd chosen to speak, even when it felt risky. As for Dana, she had done what she came to do, not out of ego or anger, but out of principle. Her reaction to a missing first-class meal had never really been about the food. It had been about what the moment represented, how little things reveal bigger truths, how silence can enable carelessness, and how leadership isn't just about power, but responsibility. The airline, once dismissive, now had a renewed focus on transparency, customer care, and internal accountability. The executives who tried to spin the blame were quietly pushed out, their plans unraveling the moment the truth came to light. Dana didn't need to expose them publicly. Their actions spoke for themselves. Before checking out, Dana wrote a short note and asked her assistant to deliver it to Carla. It read, "Keep watching. Keep speaking. You're part of the change now." As Dana headed to her next destination, she felt no need to look back. The lesson had been delivered. Not through outrage or headlines, but through quiet determination, facts, and integrity. She'd reminded an entire company, and maybe even some viewers, of a simple truth. Respect, attention to detail, and accountability aren't extras in service. They're the standard, and in the end, the missed first-class meal was never the story. It was just the spark that lit the fire.